Mm. Now, were there Japanese losses?
Very few. Maybe, I don't think there were over 10
Really?
in an airplane. See, they were in airplanes, and I don't think they lost over 10 people.
And what were the American losses, do you?
Well, there were over 1,000 killed right on the Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, I think, around 3,000 throughout on the island.
Yeah. I really think one of the things that we don't touch upon in American history as much in school is the what ifs. What if Japan did have a follow-up attack? What do you think would have happened?
Well, if they put a few more bombs, or if they put a couple of bombs in the powerhouse there, or if they put a couple of torpedoes in the caissons, that's the gates for the dry docks. Mm-hmm. It would have delayed things for at least another year or so. And of course, there were oil tanks that looked like, when you're on the Parkway going by Bayonne and all those tanks there, we had a lot of tanks, big oil tanks around Pearl Harbor, and they should have bombed them, because if they set one afire, they probably might have all gone. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know this is a bit hard to explain, but was your feeling more of a feeling of like anger, or was it more of sadness? I mean, there was heavy losses on the American side, but at the same time, there was probably like a really deep feeling of anger. How would you best describe, your feelings?
Well, I was very upset and annoyed at the least, and frankly, I didn't even think I'd ever get through the war, and I figured, well, I'd just do the best I could until I got it, because it was really, my world had come to an end on that December the 7th, I'll tell you that. And I just figured I'd go on till I got it.
When you saw that the United States was kind of uniting and backing the war, did that give you kind of a new sense of hope and patriotism?
It made us, It made us feel much better. But of course, we were way out there, and everything was back home. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until the later days of the war, maybe a year before it ended, that we saw what America can do. Here on December the 7th, our fleet practically was at the bottom of Pearl Harbor, and in less than 3 years, out in the Pacific, there were carriers, and there were destroyers, and there were cruisers, and there was even a floating dry dock, and there were tugs to take the crippled ships away. What America did America can do anything it wants to. It just has to want to. It was unbelievable what mm-hmm. they did, because we were just recovering from the world's depression, and the fleet wasn't right up to snuff, I'll tell you that, on December the 7th. And because, for instance, they didn't have enough money for fuel. They just swung around the hook in Long Beach, California for 4 or 5 months.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because that's something that we don't tend to think about the Depression. And
that's one reason the Navy financially wasn't prepared for Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. But then good old Roosevelt just poured the money in, and we took off.
You say, that was one of the reasons the Navy wasn't prepared. Could you actually, would there be any way to be prepared? Was there?
Well,
was that the kind of thing?
Radar was just in its infancy. I'd never even seen a radar at that time, and didn't even know what it was. But as you know, the radar picked up, the Army radar picked up the flight of planes, and we all thought, or not we, what the opinion was that it was our planes coming in from the West Coast. Mm-hmm. In those days, the only thing the radar could do was say there were planes out there, but they couldn't tell you whether they were ours or theirs. Mm-hmm. And There's been a lot of controversy about that, but gives people a lot to talk about.
Yeah. You mentioned before, like, a lot about how the united opinion was, back home
Yeah.
and so far away from where you were. What were the lines of communication like? But was there communication between you and your family back home?
Well, naturally there was letters and so forth, but everything was censored, and quite a little of it came out in the papers and so forth, and pictures, and about 6 weeks later they came out and showed some of the destruction at Pearl Harbor. That of course was the only communications.
Would you say that that the American people had as good an idea of what was going on as you did out there?
Yes. Yeah, they had a very good general idea, and that's all they needed. I mean, they didn't have a specific idea. But yes, they had a very good idea. The papers and the magazines and so forth, yes. Yes.
So basically, after Pearl Harbor, immediately after Pearl Harbor, in the days that followed, how did life change?
Well, for myself, in the center of Pearl Harbor is Ford Island, which is an airfield, and they sent me on the staff there, and our admiral had in charge of all the planes in the Pacific, and that was very good duty for 6 months. And then I was ordered back to the Alabama, which was being built in Norfolk Navy Yard, and I reported back to her, and then from there on, I guess it was around 5 or 6 months on that, and then we went to the North Atlantic and then the South Pacific.
And I guess how long after Pearl Harbor was that?
I got detached from Ford Island in June, and I went to the Alabama, and then that December we shook down, and then we went to Scotland and operated with the British fleet. And then that summer we went through the canal and went out to the South Pacific and operated with Halsey's fleet.
Now, what was going on politically, I guess, like right after Pearl Harbor? What was our nation doing, and what were other nations doing?
Well, we were trying to recover from the shock, and I will say we did a good job. And of course, England was trying to save herself from being bombed out of existence by the Germans. And as I said before, France had already fallen, and the world looked very dismal, I'll tell you that.
At this point, did America I guess it was President Roosevelt at the time.
Yes. Incidentally, I marched in his inauguration down Pennsylvania Avenue.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did he immediately, what was his strategy for America right after Pearl Harbor?
Well, as you know, that he called it the Day of Infamy. And, well, the strategy, unfortunately, was that Europe came first, and we came on the tail end of the stick, and which was very upsetting to the Navy. But the priority was to beat Germany down, and then they would send everything over to the Pacific. That was the general strategy.
At this point of Pearl Harbor, how far had Germany advanced?
Oh, well, France had fallen within 2 or 3 weeks before I graduated.
Really?
And London was being bombed every night, practically out of existence.
So, I'd like to actually touch upon. I mean, you were not much older than myself. I'm about 18, and you were, I guess, 24. At the time of Pearl Harbor, and immediately before and after, and you know, to think of someone like myself being there, or a student, being so much to deal with, like, emotionally, not to mention physically, but it's an experience that I think we as teenagers don't get in textbooks, and therefore find it like very hard to comprehend and get the full picture. We learn a lot of facts and dates,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of the times we don't understand what, you know,
The emotions.
exactly. And maybe you could, I mean, tell us a little bit about what you were feeling.
Well, needless to say, I was in a state of shock. I don't know that I've ever recovered from it, but it was unbelievable. I lost 1,000 shipmates on the Arizona all at once. If I'd lost one or two, I think it would have hit me worse, because you can't fathom the tremendous loss. I mean, it's just beyond comprehension. Your mind can't conceive of it.
And you were, I mean, you were a young kid, you know?
Yeah, sure.
And I guess you were away from home when you were at Annapolis.
Yeah, sure.
And things. So, I mean, did that at least prepare you for being away from everything, for being so far away?
Well, when you say so far away, if you're away, you're away. I don't think the distance makes much difference. But the reason I went, one of the reasons I went to Annapolis was that I enjoyed getting around. I wanted to see the world, and I sure did. Sometimes I didn't like what I saw, but no, all in all, I was quite happy and quite content with what I do. And there was always something new. And I tell you, the Navy keeps you. You don't get tired of it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the Navy. Having a turret with maybe 100 men in it, it was like coaching a football team. I mean, it was very, 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 very enjoyable. And we had quite a responsibility, as I told you. Here I'm 24 years old, and officer of the deck, and captain's asleep in these quarters back there in the cabin, and here you are keeping a ship in formation, and all the ships are darkened, no lights, and before the days of radar. The only way you could tell how you were doing is with your binoculars and see how big the ship got in those binoculars. And that's the only way. We had no scientific way of keeping it, but boy, we did it. And I tell you, that's something for a 24-year-old kid.
Yeah, really. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
Is there do you have any, I don't know, particularly fond memories or stories, people you met and kept in touch with, or places you went to?
Well, as midshipmen, we had a couple nice cruises to England and Madeira Islands and Germany. That was, we were in Germany when Hitler was really at his prime, and we would go down the streets and say, or salute the stormtroopers, and they say, Heil Hitler, Heil Hitler. And we had some very good, then we went to England. Our senior year, we were supposed to go to Finland, Paris, and Italy. And the last minute, they canceled it. That's the year the war broke out. And they canceled that, and we went right off Manasquan here, made circles, and went up to Halifax and Nova Scotia, and up to St. Lawrence to Quebec. That was our cruise to Europe.
So, I mean, I guess you achieved seeing the world by being in the Navy. I mean,
well, then, yeah. Well, we saw in the South Pacific, we saw a lot of the world we didn't want to see. I mean, there was nothing but atolls. I went a year and a half without seeing anything other than atolls, or shall we say civilization.
Oh, go ahead.
We never stopped the propellers that whole time. That was another thing that beat the Japs. They didn't. It was unbelievable how they supplied us. There would be 4 supply ships in a line, and we would pull alongside of each one, and one would have ammunition, the next would have refrigeration stores, and the next one would have food and just ammunition and what we needed. And on one of those ships would be our mail, which to me was unbelievable.
Well, on behalf of Manasquan High School, I'd like to say thank you for coming and informing us about your experiences, and I really had a good time, and I hope everybody learned a lot. It was very interesting.
My heart is in Manasquan High School. I come to every football game. I was captain of the football team when I was here, and anytime I can help Manasquan High School, I want to congratulate our football team. Take this opportunity. They did a great job.
Well, thank you a lot for coming down, and this is John DeRosa from MHS TV signing off. Have a good day. Historical events are easy to remember on anniversaries and such, but Pearl Harbor is a day that should be remembered always. I think what was interesting talking to Mr. Schaefer, he reminded us that a lot of these